I'm joined now by the host of VLAD TV, DJ VLAD. DJ VLAD, I mean, pretty horrifying listening to these testimonies. What did you make of what you just heard?
Well, Jaguar Wright is known to be a conspiracy theorist. I don't really co-sign anything that she says. I've never had her on my show, and I don't have any plans to have her on my show.
You don't believe her?
She's got an album in 20 years, and a lot of this stuff is just stuff she's heard, things she's making up, and so forth. I'm not saying that there aren't serious things that Diddy may have done, but yeah, I can't co-sign anything that Jaguar Wright is saying, if that's your question.
Well, I mean, obviously, since we last spoke, there have now been these charges against Diddy, which are incredibly serious. You didn't think at the time we last spoke that he was likely to face these charges. Are you surprised it's come to this?
I'm not surprised, because I feel that law enforcement in general is reactionary. I think that when you look at high-profile individuals, their arrests, indictments usually come after a documentary, a big TV show, or in Diddy's case, it was this huge lawsuit that Cassie filed, and everyone got to see all the details and all the attention that came to it. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise that it actually happened, because you've seen this happen over and over again. R. Kelly, Harvey Weinstein, all the attention that they got, and then now Diddy. So yeah, I mean, this is ultimately the world that we live in. But he'll have his day in court. And, you know, his lawyer said that he's not going to take a plea deal, because I think a plea deal at this point is probably going to be very heavy-handed, probably 20 years plus. So it makes sense for him to go to court. But we'll ultimately see what happens, you know, because we haven't really seen, apart from some of the funny stuff of, oh, there's 1 million bottles of lube that they found there. I'm sorry, 1,000 bottles of lube and so forth. We have yet to really see what the evidence is. And I think once we see the actual evidence, then people will actually formulate an opinion on what's happening right now. Do
you think there's a lot of people in the rap world in particular who are pretty fearful right now of where this may all lead? Is it a bit like the Epstein scandal, do you think?
I don't really think so, because, I mean, ultimately, everyone wanted to go to Diddy's white parties when they were happening. You know, if I got an invite, I would go. But there's a party within a party. There's the actual party where the big celebrities go to, the Howard Sterns and the Leonardo DiCaprios and so forth. You never hear of any of them really being involved in any of this stuff. They go home, you know, at 2, 3 o'clock a.m. And then there's the private parties that seem to involve the sex workers and probably certain types of people that are kind of in an inner circle. No. And we'll see if those names ultimately come out or not. You know, I think that when it comes to a situation like the feds, cooperating is a very big thing. And I think if Diddy cooperates and gives up some big names of actual crimes that they committed, that'd be a way of actually, you know, lessening the amount of time that he does, or possibly even walking away.
I mean, what had you heard about Diddy over the years? Obviously, people knew he had parties. They knew he was a big rap star and so on. But the nature of this kind of thing. I mean, I'm asking because when I watched, for example, I met Diddy a couple of times. He was always perfectly charming to me. But you know, I've met a lot of people who are charming and turned out to be monsters. The video that came out of showing him beating up his then girlfriend in a hotel corridor was so shocking that when I watched it, I remember thinking, well, this guy is capable of anything. I mean, a man that would do that, who's that famous, who would do that to a woman in a hotel corridor, public hotel corridor, if he's prepared to be that violent in public, knowing there might be cameras around, he's prepared to do pretty much anything, was my conclusion. I mean, what did you hear about him over the years?
Yeah, I mean, that tape was horrific. And after our interview that we did with Roger Bonds, who I helped to bring onto the show, I did my own interview with Roger Bonds. It was a very in-depth, I think, two-hour interview, where he goes into actually witnessing a lot of women that were physically abused by Diddy. I mean, not only Cassie, of course, which he saw multiple times, but Kim Porter. He was on a trip where Kim Porter got her nose broken, allegedly by Diddy, and flew in a plastic surgeon to fix it. There was a personal chef that Diddy beat up. I actually heard voicemails of her describing it. This wasn't even something that she wanted to come publicly with. There was other women as well that I got details on. So I think that Diddy has a long history of violence towards women, but also of men, because there's also the Steve Stout incident If you remember that whole situation, he was in an interview. Sorry, he was in a music video with Nas, "Hate Me Now," and there was a scene where Diddy was on the cross like Jesus, and I guess he went to Steve Stout afterwards and said that he wants to take that part out. That part wasn't taken out, so Diddy and his entourage show up at Steve Stout's office and they beat him with a champagne bottle, which they ultimately settled out of court for. So I think there's a lot of violence that has happened around him, and I think at this point it's just catching up to him.
There's lots of rumor mills about him being secretly gay or bisexual or whatever. I mean, I don't care, but do you think there's much credence to those?
I mean, it's hard to say. I have heard, because remember, for example, the Wendy Williams situation. She was on the radio in New York, and she said that she had photos of Diddy in a gay type environment of some sort. And I had someone actually explain to me what that photo was after the fact. And Diddy came in and threatened to sue the radio station unless she was fired. And she was fired, and she had to go to Philly for, I think, 5 years or something like that. So there was that. I'm not sure how true it is because it was just a photo, and a photo, could mean a lot of different things. I mean, the fact that he's a cuckold, that he likes to masturbate while watching women that he's with have sex with other men. I don't know. Is that gay? Is that bisexual? Is that just being a cuckold? It's hard to say. It's not something that I'm actually into. But I'm sure it blurs the lines between homosexuality and bisexuality somewhat. But I don't think he's exclusively gay because he has a lot of children. It's hard to really say, and it ultimately doesn't really matter. And, I've talked about this in my interviews. I think if he came forward and said, "Hey, I'm a bisexual man," I think a lot of the jokes, like the no Diddy jokes and so forth, will kind of ease down, and people might actually be a little understanding of his situation a little bit more, as opposed to him denying it. But ultimately, who knows? I have no idea.
We've talked, people have talked a lot in the last few years that it's unusual that so few people in the music business have been held to account under the Me Too campaign umbrella in the way that other industries were held to account. Could this be, following R. Kelly and others, could this be a tipping point where there might be a lot of other rap stars in particular, perhaps with very checkered backgrounds, lots of rumors about them, could all start falling like dominoes?
It's hard to say. Like I said in the beginning, it's very reactionary. I think if there is a lot of media attention over somebody, there's a documentary about them, there's movies about them and so forth, I think that ends up getting on law enforcement's radar, and then you will see things kind of escalate very quickly. It's hard to say. R. Kelly was extremely high profile, and there will be others, but I don't think that the music industry is really having less situations than other industries. I mean, every industry has certain situations and they're high profile, and there's a bunch of other stuff that kind of falls below the radar.
Finally, Diddy, what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think Diddy will ever come out of prison?
That's a tough one, because I was really shocked that he didn't get a bond. I thought for sure that he'd be sitting in his mansion right now awaiting trial, but he's sitting in a jail cell right now, and it could be years before this actually makes it to trial. So it proves that things are very, very serious on his end. And if you look at the R. Kelly situation, he got, I believe, 30 years. This may fall along the same lines, except the only difference is when I looked into the R. Kelly case, a lot of the convictions were based on underage girls. You've heard a few spatterings of underage accusations, but in general, it seemed like most of the women were of legal age in the Diddy case. So I'm thinking it won't be as severe as it is with Diddy. As it is with R. Kelly. But for someone like Diddy, who's in his mid-50s, he doesn't want to spend 5, 10, 20 years in prison. No. He wants to get out. He wants to keep it moving. So I think he will get out of prison at one point. It's just hard to say, right now what it's going to be.
Yeah.